What's the next thing for you to do to keep leveling up your game as a drone pilot? There's so many things you could be doing with your drone that maybe you haven't tried that's free. Heart rate would race, right? Like the anxiety of doing something new.
These are things that you can take and incorporate into either your SOPs or your mindset or something.
Everyone, usually when they're like-minded or in a community sense, are going to want to help other people in that community. So you've done your basic certification, you've done your advanced certification, you've probably done your flight review, you've passed all that, you're in the air, you've got some drone jobs going, and what's next? What's the next thing for you to do to keep leveling up your game as a drone pilot? Is that it, or is there more to do? This week we're going to talk about how to continue to improve yourself, professional development, how to keep improving yourself as a drone pilot. We're going to get right into it this week. Another episode of Coastal Drone Weekly. My name's Ian. This is Finn, and let's get to it.
All right. So, as Ian mentioned, you've just finished your advanced flight review. The flight reviewer says this has been a successful flight review. Congratulations. Maybe they give you a couple pieces of feedback, and then that's the last time someone from Transport Canada is potentially going to take a look at your...
Once you pay the processing fee.
Once you pay the processing fee. But that's the last time that maybe an instructor is going to be there with you to talk about your drone flying. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to, once you're done the flight review, how to keep progressing as a pilot. How to keep
getting good.
Exactly. The learning, and this is not just in aviation, but in life, the learning does not stop. You do not stop improving as a pilot, as a person. And the first step, normally once you finish your flight review, you're very stressed for your flight review. You go in, you do well. It's the end of the flight review, you sit down, you relax, and then maybe you stop thinking about a couple of things. But if you're going to start working in the industry, you're going to need to master the basics first. That means you're going to need to develop and master a couple of different aspects. You're going to need to understand different types of airspaces, different types of environments of flying. You need to master your pre-flight checks and your site surveys and your checklists, and you need to master your emergency procedures.
Yeah. You need to live them. You need to know them. They need to be, it's called memory items.
Exactly.
Right?
For the flight review, you don't necessarily, you need to have a good understanding of these things, but you don't need to be a master. If you want to work in the business, you need to I don't want to say master again.
Get good?
Yeah,
no.
you need to have a comfort level even higher than when you were on the flight review.
Keep improving your proficiency.
Exactly. So one of the things that I often mention to people with emergency procedures is it could be between the day you write your emergency procedures and the day you use them, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. So you need to keep reviewing your emergency procedures. Or else you're not going to, when the time comes to use them, if it's been 10 years since you last checked your emergency procedures, it's not going to go very well. You need to get comfortable with your aircraft, its capabilities, its limitations. If you have recently taken your flight review, you'll know that the flight items on the flight review, we don't put the drone through its paces. We don't make you take the drone to its maximum capabilities. So that's up to you to learn its maximum capabilities and to become comfortable with these and also its limitations.
Absolutely.
Weather limitations, camera limitations, anything. Like if you're looking at getting into photography or something like this, on the flight review, we never even talk about the camera at all.
No,
of
course.
You could be we don't care if you take a good photo on the flight review. If
you won't pass unless it's a Pulitzer winning prize.
Exactly.
Photo.
But if you want to work in the industry, then you're going to need to have a good photo.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because like the flight review standard is to be able to safely navigate obstacles, maneuver the aircraft in a way that it basically points in the direction of flight. If we ask you to go in one direction, you have to be able to navigate, because the flight review applies not only to RPAS, right? Well, not only to multi-rotor RPAS, but also fixed wing, any heavier than air RPAS. So
that is over 250 grams.
Oh, over 250 grams. So a small RPAS, not a micro. Mm-hmm. That skill set, we look at, are you able to competently take off, land, maneuver the drone, understand its emergency systems, and understand the flight manual of the aircraft.
Avoid an obstacle, judge distances.
Exactly. Those are it's such a blanket statement when it comes to this. Do you know how to set your drone into log mode? When would you use log mode? Just talking about camera stuff, right? When would you change your shutter speed? When would you change your shutter priority? These are all things we talked about earlier in this year on our podcast, but it's more than that, right? Because it's constantly changing. There's always new firmware updates and new features that come with those firmware updates. So that the knowledge of your systems, when should you turn off obstacle avoidance, right? What's going to happen when you're less than 10 meters above moving water, right? What's going to happen when your GPS doesn't work? What's going to happen when you're indoors? How many times have you had to unlock your drone in a blue zone or in a red zone? And what's going to happen on the time you try to do it and you don't have cell reception? So the systems knowledge is the easiest thing for you to do. Like the reason we're talking about this today right now is we're into October, right? Weather is not great, but we're looking at 3 to 4 months of not great weather ahead of us. So now's the time to become an expert on every single capability of your current drone or the drone you plan to buy or how your business is going to grow. Are you an expert in all the systems and capabilities it can do? Does your drone have SDK? Have you ever tried using a third-party mapping software for your drone, right? Have you tried to go out and do something like Drone Deploy or Spexy or Maps Made Easy or any of the photogrammetry software out there, right? There's so many things you could be doing with your drone that maybe you haven't tried that's free or close to free.
Mm-hmm. Or even just getting comfortable with the sticks. Like if someone were to bring in a Nevada to the flight review, I would tell them to fly it without the goggles on and just fly it in normal mode.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a spectacular FPV pilot to pass the flight review, but if you want to get epic FPV shots,
it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. You don't need to. I will not ask you to do flips. I will not ask you to fly through a hoop.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to do flips and fly through a hoop, perfectly reasonable thing that you might do in the course of your career, you're going to need to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about understanding the basics, improving as a regular pilot, improving as an FPV pilot, and then skills and drills. So just to keep us on topic a little bit, because we can easily go around this, and we're talking about right now mastering the basics. So yeah, knowing your systems, that's a big one. Knowing your flight manual cover to cover, right? It's the same as being a professional pilot in any other situation. You need to know your flight manual cover to cover, because that's the binding document that you agree to understand and comply with. On the drone space, there's always going to be a new version. So you want to know what's there and then what's not as the versions change.
And the other thing that changes, and this is relevant because it just changed, is the regulations get updated and the AIM also gets updated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that goes back to the regulatory side of it, but we should talk about this at some point today, is recency, right? Well, a big part of this is recency, actually, because it's a 24 months. That's one of the things you have to do, is you have to maintain your recency.
I would consider that, one of the basics is maintaining your recency.
Yeah.
You have to, every 24 months, you have to perform a recency activity, and that gets you to re-engage with the regulations, especially if there have been major changes.
Yeah.
In the last year or so, there hasn't been any major changes, but if you, let's say you got your license, your certificate in 2019, and then didn't fly, well, you need recency, and the regulations there have been some changes to some of the procedures since 2019.
If you need to maintain your recency on your drone, you need to do one of four things, and this has to happen every 24 months. So every 24 months, in order to maintain your recency with a drone pilot in Canada, you can retake the online exam. That could be either the basic or the advanced. You can do the flight review if you haven't done it, or you can do it again if you're a sucker for punishment. You can do the Transport Canada self-directed recency exercise, which is a downloadable PDF, or you can attend a Transport Canada approved or self-declared approved recency seminar, right? So it could be a rust remover. You could go to COPA. They do their monthly pilot seminars. Or you can do, like, we have the Coastal Drone annual recency seminar where we review the regulations that have changed and do some practical training.
And I just want to clarify one thing. If it has been more than 24 months since your last recency activity, that does not mean you have to completely redo everything.
No.
The regulation says that you have performed a recency activity within the preceding 24 months.
Yeah.
So if it's been 27 months, you don't have to redo the flight review or anything like that.
You just can't fly.
You just can't fly until you rewrite the exam, attend a seminar, do the self-study guide.
And that's actually a really important point. Actually, flying your drone frequently does not count towards your recency. If you fly your drone every day for the next 26 months, after 24 months, you are now not in compliance for your recency if you do nothing else.
Yeah, there's no, I could never fly again, ever. Every 24 months, attend a seminar.
Yeah.
But I'm still considered legally a drone pilot.
Which reminds me, I need to do my Part 107 recency soon.
Nice.
Yeah. That's also every 24 months, but they have an online test that you have to do. So you just do it right on the site.
So let's kind of move to the next thing, which is, so we're going to talk about different ways of improving as a pilot, like more specific salient topics. And we're going to split it up into like, we're calling it regular, that's a non FPV drone pilot, and then FPV drone pilot. So improving as a regular drone pilot, one of the things that you're always going to have to do is make sure that your plans and your site surveys are more than meet the standard, which means getting good at researching and planning ahead of time. Not always just showing up to the site and planning on the spot, but having a process and a procedure for how you're going to build out your site surveys.
Yeah, you should have a robust standard operating procedures.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they need to be 200 pages.
No.
What they need to be is pragmatic and efficient and relevant to your operation and the complexity of your operation. So if you're only doing real estate, well, you could probably have a 2 or 3 page set of SOPs that includes everything that needs to be in the CARS 90123 requirements and 90127 for your site survey. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing complex operations on a regular basis that either borderline on SFOC requirements or include SFOCs, then your standard operating procedures should capture all of that into your routine so that you're demonstrating a robustness of your procedures and actions.
One of the best SOPs I've seen is we were doing some training for a fire hall, a fire department. And what they did is they had a 2-sided laminated sheet of paper with a hole punch in the side and a whiteboard marker through the hole. Mm-hmm. And on one side it was a site survey, and on the other side it was the pre-flight and post-flight checklist. Mm-hmm. So as they said, what they told me is, as we're driving to the emergency in the truck,
yeah,
we can start to fill out the site survey with the whiteboard marker. When we get out there's a spot for them to sketch the area.
Yeah.
And then as they're jumping out of the truck and setting up the drone,
yeah,
their SOPs have been completed, and that this is an emergency situation, so they don't necessarily have time to do a long procedure. So this was a really,
but that's when it's most important to follow an SOP because you're distracted by everything else.
And then so this is why it can be good to have like a form that you need to fill out, right? Because then if you look at the form and you see something's missing, then you know that it has not been covered yet. And then when it's not missing anymore, when you write it in there, that's how you know that it's been completed successfully. Mm-hmm. For photography especially, you want your stick movements need to be not super jerky. Yeah. You need to either find a way to make them not abrupt, or
by photography, you mean moving photography.
Moving photography, yes. Videography is what we'll say here. You need steady stick movements are important, and you can tell, like, if it's not a good drone videography shot, one of the ways that you can normally tell is if you see the nose jerking left and right.
Yeah, abrupt yaw movements. A lot of that comes from what I experience is pilots are hitting record before they have the shot. So they're hitting record and hoping the shot comes into frame, which kind of comes back to the same idea as, like, you call it spray and pray in photography, right? It's like you haven't really framed the shot. You've got the camera up and you've pressed record so that you don't miss the moment that you think is the moment, but it's not the shot, right? So it's more about taking a second to frame up the shot, think about just for stills, frame the shot, plan the shot, have it in your mind before you get to that spot, and then capture it. With video, it's, okay, I want to do a linear action. You can have the camera recording the entire time. I don't care. Like, that's like, buy a terabyte SSD or SD card now. If you want to have all that raw footage, sure. But what you end up publishing is the shot. And that's where the better you get on the sticks about thinking about it being just pressure, right? Like it's the number one thing that I see in flight reviews with new pilots, that immediately you can tell they've only flown this thing 2 or 3 times, and that's fine, but you'll see full deflection on the sticks, and they're using either cine mode to slow themselves down or some sort of dampening, but the sticks themselves are moving left, right, up, down in full, like, and when I mean full deflection, like you look at them and they'll be like doing this, right? So it's like the abrupt like pushing on the stick, and what'll happen is the drone is going like this. It's being pensive or
they come to a stop, and sometimes you see it comes to a stop, and then it like the nose will pitch up so that it can arrest they're trying to
stop
forward
the drone
movement.
instead of just and the biggest improvement you can make as a drone pilot when it comes to this is, here's my start point, here's my end point, and I'm accelerating into the shot, holding a constant, and then decelerating the shot. Or stop recording or stop the shot before you end, so that you give yourself a header in front of the shot and or a tail at the end of the shot, so that when you edit the video, you've got that working space of the actual gold in the center of the shot.
Exactly.
So, and when it comes to yaw, just don't do it. Right.
If you're doing the orbit shot, the whole point is balancing the yaw.
Yes.
If you see it getting twitchy or there's an abrupt yaw movement, you have to start again.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly.
Get comfortable flying in different environments, and when we talk about this, we mean like not just, you know, if you trained up in a rural area and you mostly have flown in like fields and stuff, as opposed to like flying in a more urban environment. There are scenarios where you might have to fly in different environments, so it is a good idea to practice flying in different environments if you're unused to urban environments, if you're unused to rural environments, mountainous environments.
Yeah. Get comfortable flying in different situations
before someone is paying you to do it.
Yeah. Get comfortable with flying in uncomfortable situations.
Exactly.
Right? When I first started flying drones, heart rate would race, right? Like the anxiety of doing something new and the distractions that come from that. It can be like your peak performance is going to suffer, because now you're worried about someone coming up and asking you questions or harassing you or something. So get comfortable, get out and fly.
Or you're worried about hitting a tree.
Or hitting a tree. That's true.
We've talked about this in the past a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit today. You don't need to take a good photo for the flight review, but you do need to take a good photo for your career. So some tips to level up your photography. Always remember to be shooting in manual or RAW. That will make the editing process, will give you more flexibility in the editing process.
Yeah.
It's crazy what Photoshop can do now to take a not so great photo and turn it into a passable photo if you shoot in RAW. If you were shooting in a JPEG, you have a lot less options.
Yeah. And RAW is going to give you that flexibility to fix the exposure mostly. It's not going to fix bad composition. It's not going to fix blurry photos. It's not going to fix a boring subject.
No.
But what it will do is let you, within a couple stops of either being under or overexposed, or a little bit of latitude in the image.
To make your photo interesting, we've talked about this before, use leading lines. So interesting lines, angles to trace through the image, rule of thirds, framing, these sorts of things. You can go watch our episode on photography where we talk in depth about how to, or some of the things to look for when you're planning your still photography.
Yeah, composition, right? So you need to tell a visual story with the image. There needs to be strong subject, and there needs to be framing and some sort of composition to the image that draws the viewer in. Right. Stop the scroll.
For lighting, the best time to fly is, we call it golden hour. This is the time when it's either in the morning or the evening. It's before the sun fully sets, but the sun is low in the sky, and just due to the angle of the sun's rays on subjects, it makes shadows more dramatic. And it's called golden hour because the light appears golden.
And this is for photography, not for mapping.
Not for mapping. This is for photography and videography. At golden hour, the lighting will become more pleasant, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you get warmer hues. You get more contrast. You get typically golden hour, end of the day, like the sky might be more interesting, right? You'll have, if it's clouds, it'll be higher contrast.
But you also get 15 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
It's not golden hour.
It's this time of year, it's going to be shorter.
Yeah, it's golden 15.
Yeah. But at least it's not at 10 o'clock at night.
Yes.
So.
And then if nothing really catches your eye, you can point the camera down to just kind of reset your brain.
Yeah.
Bring it back up, put it down, bring it back up. Just look around.
Yeah.
You don't need to, if the subject is not interesting, you don't need to capture it.
Yeah.
There's kind of an old saying in photography, like when we went from film to digital. In film, you'd take 100 photos and 6 would be good, and then in digital, you'd take 1,500 photos and 6 will be good. So don't worry too much. If not, every photo is going in National Geographic.
Still waiting.
And then don't be afraid to look into different areas of operation. If you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. If you feel that you know, maybe you've been working in real estate, if you feel that you can do mapping, industrial inspection, you need to maybe build some experience in that field, but if you were a drone pilot, I wouldn't think that you would, or I don't think that you should only think that you can do one type of operation.
Yeah, don't pigeonhole yourself into just one niche when it comes to drone operations. The person that's going to make the most money is going to be the person that has the most flexibility in their operation, for sure. Mm-hmm. And you just need to figure out, what does your business model support, right? Is it going to make sense for you to go after a job that requires a ton of prep work and a ton of back office processing, say like photogrammetry or inspection or something else that requires a ton of office work that maybe isn't going to get you paid, because that side of it might not pay the same as the time per hour that you're in the air with the drone. So
you can analyze your business. What is it? A FRAT analysis?
Oh, SWOT.
A SWOT analysis.
So SWOT analysis is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So you identify the strengths that you have inside your organization, identify your weaknesses, look for opportunities that your business could take on, and then you look for threats. So that could be existing competition or high barriers to entry or things that could hold you back.
We talk about this in depth in our business course and actually have an example of a SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Which I should have remembered the name because I wrote the example of the SWOT analysis. It's a good example. So that's for kind of your standard drone pilot. Let's talk about for FPV. So a little bit different. For FPV, you have to warm up first.
Yeah.
You can't go in cold. And then this is going to be a little...
It's a graduated approach.
Yes. When I talk about this is going to be a little bit niche. So back in the day, Ian and I, we used to play the video games. And one of the games that was popular back in the day was Call of Duty.
I was going to say Pilot Wings.
No, I'm thinking of Call of Duty because one of the when you were looking online and saying how to improve at Call of Duty, because I was bad at it. And I never actually improved at it. One of the things that they would say is gradually increase your controller or mouse sensitivity. It's the same thing for when you're flying your FPV. As you fly, once you get comfortable with the sensitivity, because a higher sensitivity will make it more challenging to fly if you just go from 0 to a very high sensitivity. Mm-hmm. So you have to gradually only increase the sensitivity when you feel comfortable doing that. Mm-hmm. Now you might ask, like, why would you want to increase your sensitivity if it makes it harder? Well, it will give you a little bit more control.
Yeah. Yeah, your responsiveness is going to increase. And this actually works for both, for GPS and for... There are times where I will fly cinematic long shots in sport mode because I need to go from a very slow shot to a very fast shot. And when you're in normal or cine mode, you might be limited to a couple meters per second, but when you're in sport mode, you're unlimited on your top end of speed. But when you're in sport mode, if you ram that stick to full deflection, it's going to immediately go to full send and it's going to be very jerky. So that's where you have that curve. It's not a linear movement. It's a gradual increase in pressure as you start to, it's like driving a car, right? You don't drop the clutch and go. You gradually get going and then start to accelerate, right? It's not a drag race. It's a smooth rollout.
Yeah, you've never driven with me, clearly, Ian. In the menus of DJI aircraft, you can adjust the sensitivity of the motors.
Yeah, so rates.
Yeah.
exponential curve, right? So rates is sensitivity or how quickly things move, right? So an input of 1 and then how much it ramps up. Exponential curve or expo or exp will be a number based on if you put in 1, does 1 equal 1 or does 1 equal 2 or 6 or whatever, because it's going to curve up. And by increasing your exponential curve, it actually dampens the lower end of your control inputs. So a little bit becomes a less, but a lot becomes a lot more.
Exactly. So then once you're comfortable with a higher sensitivity to get more control of your aircraft, you can set up some sort of obstacle or course to practice.
And this works again for both, right? You need to be comfortable flying close to obstacles and through hazards. NIST, N-I-H-S-T, it's an American standard test that a lot of first responders use for drones, and it's basically a drone skill course that includes a bunch of buckets, and there's numbers inside the buckets, and you need to fly the drone up. The idea is you're inspecting them. It's kind of meant to simulate not only obstacles, but like cell phone tower inspections where you're going up and reading the serial number of a modem or something, right? They need to know what that modem serial number is. So you go up and take a high resolution photo of it. Well, get a bunch of buckets, put them on a stick, put numbers in the buckets, and then you fly around until you can look into that bucket. Or you can use that as obstacles. You can put up frames around it. So the NIST is an actual certification that you can get to prove your drone skill ability. That is so far above and beyond what the flight review requires.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, but but the buckets with a letter or number in them are a great tool. You can, get
flaming hoops,
or if you have friends or children or something, you can tell them, take these buckets, scatter them around.
Do this? No.
Do that. No, don't do that. We're not trying to William Tell your kids here. No, just get them to write a message in a bucket, and then chuck it in the yard, and then you can read it.
Yeah.
Experiment using different camera angles, and if it's an FPV that you've home built, you can experiment different propellers, different batteries, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, understand what differences there are when you start changing flight components.
Exactly. So have a good understanding the difference between 4 props, 5 props, 3 props.
Yeah.
You'll have different handling and characteristics. These props are designed for different applications.
Well, and airframe sizes.
Exactly.
So you could run a 4-inch, 5-inch, 7-inch, 10-inch frame. Right. So they're all going to have different applications in different ways. Like a small frame is going to respond a lot faster and it's going to have a higher roll rate and be way more aerobatic, but it might not have the endurance because you have to run a smaller battery to fit inside the frame. It may not have the speed or power to run higher speed. So in the FPV world, if you're chasing moving vehicles or bikes or cars, you might want a bigger frame, like a 5 or a 7-inch. But then if you're chasing a mountain bike rider downhill through the woods, you don't want a 7-inch or a 10-inch frame because you're going to have to slam that thing through trees. So,
and this is the same for both, fly at new spots, different obstacles, different challenges. Just switch it up and keep it interesting.
When the weather's bad is a good time to go and location scout.
Yes.
Right? That's another thing you can do. If you can't go and fly, you can at least go out for a drive and look for new spots to fly, do your site surveys on the spots, figure out if they're good spots to go and practice, and then when the weather's good, you've got a spot lined up ready to go.
And if there's permission required to fly in that spot,
you can take care of it.
Yeah.
In the ahead of time. Yeah. No, location scouting, getting comfortable, building a portfolio of spots. Either if you're doing content creation like reels and stuff, you don't want to always be flying at the same spot. There's Instagram reels out there and they always fly at the same spot. Probably because it's easiest or most convenient or the only legal spot that they can go with their drone, but
still not ideal.
Yeah, and your content's going to get stale.
Yeah. So before you're about to fly, so we're calling it a new line. This is like a new route that you're taking with your FPV. Just some of the things to keep in mind. Is it safe? Could you be putting manned aircraft at risk? And is this something that's within your skill level? So when we're talking about this, we're talking about more advanced maneuvers. Cam before he was mentioning to me things like cliff dives or like those adrenaline rush videos. Yeah. Before you fly those things, you really want to know, is it safe? Are you putting someone at risk? And is it within your skill level? Yeah. Because if you fly a complicated line that you can't do, Well, mostly the risk is going to be that you're going to smash up your hardware. If yeah, you're going to learn the hard way. And if you've just spent months building this aircraft and pouring thousands of dollars into it, and then it ends up on the face of a boulder, you're not going to have a great afternoon picking up.
So how can we avoid how can we avoid that? What's one of the best ways? We talked a little bit about Call of Duty earlier. What else can we do?
Simulators.
Yeah. So we've talked about this in the past a little bit, but like there's FPV racing simulator, right? So DRL is one of the most widely used. It's a sim for the Drone Racing League. It's available on Xbox and computer, both Mac and PC. Uncrashed is an awesome one as well in terms of like visual fidelity. There's Velocidrone as well. There's Little Arms one that's more like GPS drone. There's DJI has their own built into theirs as well. All of these are relatively lightweight. If you have a gaming computer or an Xbox,
Yeah, and if you have a computer, you need to hook up a controller, you can use an Xbox controller or something like that, or
yeah, and I don't recommend it. I recommend getting your hands on a controller that's got similar or equivalent gimbals to the controller that you fly your drone with. So
are some FPV controllers able to hook up to a PC?
Yeah, to some extent. So I'm not going to say it works with all of them, but some of them the DJI controllers work with, but it's a little tougher, the DJI ones. But there are universal controllers out there like TBS Mambo.
Yeah, you could use that on a computer and with your FPV.
That's right. Yeah, and you just plug it in over USB and it shows up as a Windows joystick and then you adjust it. The reason I don't suggest the Xbox is convenient, the PlayStation, there's so much return to center spring on these controllers, and the fidelity of the controls is so coarse and so rough.
Yeah, they're not designed for this.
It's great for the first 10 hours, but after that, stop using it because you're going to actually negatively train your fingers and you're going to cause, you're not going to progress beyond that.
Couple other things, especially if it's like a long line scenario, like you're about to follow. We were talking about mountain bike scenario. Let's say we're flying a mountain biker. Scout beforehand, walk it. So we watched that video for Drone Pilots React, which you can go see. Yeah. And at one point in one of the videos, they go and they walk the entire thing looking for obstacles.
Yeah.
Determine safe exit points. Is there anywhere where you can bail out?
Yeah. Can you go up?
Can you go up? Can you go to the left? Can you go to the right? Or if anything goes wrong, is it tree?
Yeah.
Determine signal loss. So look out for. So remember, these radio controllers work via line of sight. So look out for things that could potentially obstruct your line of sight, where you would potentially lose video. And then know if you lose video, what your course of action is going to be. Are you going to lose video for a second, or is there going to be a spot where it's going to lose line of sight for multiple seconds?
Yeah. And what's going to happen if you lose video? Do you have a fail-safe system built into your drone? Do you have return to home? Do you have hover in place? That's actually a really good one. And this comes up in the flight review, is DJI drones, for example. You can configure what happens when the drone loses signal. Do you want it to return to home? Do you want it to hover in place? Or do you want it to land where it is? We talk about this a lot, but you definitely don't want your drone to land in place if you're working over water. And you may not want it to return to home if you're operating from a moving platform. So be either a boat or you're the drone pilot on a moving vehicle, and you're chasing vehicles, right? So if you're in the vehicle with them, your home point could be 2 kilometers back very easily. So you don't want those. And that's something that not only should it be part of your SOPs, but it should be a consideration for your setup and your safety.
Exactly. Practice a few run-ups, and then right before you're going to do it, you have to just commit.
Yeah.
If you're, we talk about this all the time when I'm teaching people how to fly airplanes. It's like you need to trust the hardware and you need to trust yourself.
Yeah, you need to expand your envelope when you're flying, right? If you're not expanding your envelope and considering how can I do that better next time, or how can I do it better at this time, then what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Exactly. Like when I'm instructing, I'm constantly trying to push my students to make decisions, fly the plane in different scenarios, that sort of thing.
Well, and how are you trying to do it better as well, right? I'm always thinking about that. It's like, okay, that landing was terrible. I could do this better next time, or I could do that. Or, if I had done it this way, or I remember last time I was on this approach, I did this. You know what? This time around, I'm going to try this and see if it's better or worse. And if it's better, I'm going to improve it next time.
Exactly. My favorite line, I'll just say it as an aside. Sometimes the student will turn to me and said, should we start descending now? Like for landing? Like we're coming into the airport. Should we start descending now? I don't know.
You're a bad instructor.
No, I'm a very good instructor, actually. So we talked about using the simulator, which is a great way. And then the other thing is you can join a community, fly with other people, try out their hardware.
Thanks for being here live, by the way.
Exactly. So, we talked about, why using different propellers there for different things. Instead of buying a new set of propellers, see if borrow a set of propellers. Yeah. Don't crash it, though. But borrow a set of propellers. See how other things work with your aircraft before you commit monetarily to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's benefits of any community, right? You're going to find like-minded people that are either there to be friends, join an association, help elevate your game, right? Everyone, usually when they're like-minded or in a community sense, are going to want to help other people in that community improve their operation because it elevates, right? The rising tide floats all boats. Mm-hmm. So that's an important part of it. And then also the opportunity to learn from other people's mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Or share your learnings and be transparent about it.
If you ever read the manual for human factors, that is recommended reading for all pilots of any type of piloting. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you have to pay for it, which is unfortunate, but it's a good read, the manual for human factors. And one of the things they talk about is the importance of hangar talk. Mm-hmm. Because this is, and you go to any airport and you can sucker any pilot into telling you 100 stories about some random nonsense. But hangar talk is actually they talk about it in the flight instructing section. They say for your students, hangar talk is an important part of their development.
Absolutely. Same
for you as a drone pilot. Hangar talk, I don't know if we would use the same term for drones. Probably not. Maybe.
I can't think of a better one.
No.
What do you think?
So, yeah. When you're out at the field with other drone pilots, and that hangar talk is important. These are things that you can take and incorporate into either your SOPs or your mindset or something. Yeah. Because mostly hangar talk is about times that we've messed up.
Yeah. So there I was.
So there I was.
Did I ever tell you about that one time
Yeah. So. For these sorts of things, there are Malt GP events. In the Lower Mainland, we have Quads R Us, which is a racing group.
Yeah, so an FPV-oriented multi-GP group. They're also part of Team Canada FPV.
Okay. If you are in an area that doesn't have some sort of FPV community, it might be time for you to start your own.
Yeah. You can also join Model Airplane Association of Canada or the equivalent in the States, right? There are chapters of MAC that are
open to
multi-rotor operations.
Not all of them are. So
it's 50-50.
Yeah. Or you could just reach out to other people directly, or you could check things like Facebook groups, meetup.com, like that sort of thing.
Right?
Yeah, fly-ins.
Look for associations. Yeah, no, it's something I've always wanted to set something up out here as well. We kind of need to plan for that at some point, but it'd love to have like a meet and greet at minimum, right, on the West Coast here.
Yeah.
So, and then have like a fly-in from that side of it.
Yeah. So then let's talk about some skills and drills that you can drill yourself on.
Yeah.
For standard drones, hand launching and catching, subject tracking, orbits, reveals, jib shots, and then mock scenarios.
Okay. So let's talk about these individually. So hand launching and catching. You need to get comfortable. There's massive debate of whether it's safe or not. And it's ultimately going to come down to you as the operator and the drone that you're doing. But there are situations where it makes practical and safe sense to operate your drone from your hand and to catch it and return it to your hand. The reasons I do it are if it's an unprepared landing site, so dusty environment, and it's a small drone like this, it's safer for me to take off and not risk the gimbal getting dirt or dust into it.
Or the motors. These motors are exposed on this one.
Exactly. Dust is going to get into the bell and it's going to start grinding and it's just going to cause problems. And you're going to wear out your drone way too quickly. So learning the procedure to safely hand catch or hand launch your drone, and or also how to learn how to grab the drone and flip it so that the props stop immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The other place that it's really important and or useful to do this is on boats, right? You're landing in a confined space. There's a very good chance it's going to snag a net or something else like a fishing line. So you want to learn how to do that comfortably because you're also on a moving platform while you're trying to do that. What else? What was the next one?
Subject tracking.
Subject tracking. Yeah. So again, it's not something we talk about in the flight review at all because it's not a feature that every drone has. But if your drone has the ability to do tracking, learn how to use spotlight mode. It could help you immediately improve your drone skills for doing videography. If you're trying to do orbits, learn how to put it in spotlight mode so that it tracks the subject automatically. And then all you need to do is move the drone in the direction you want it to, and it will figure out how to do the orbit.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can get an example of what a shot should look like, and then you can start working on your manual skills.
Yeah, so orbits, reveals, and jib shots. So these are ones that can be partially automated, but if you're able to figure out how to do them with just your thumbs, that's...
Yeah, it's great to have that manual skill, but honestly, there's still times where I'll use subject tracking, spotlight mode especially, because spotlight mode is where the drone is like a spotlight. It's literally tracking that one spot, and as I move it left or right, it'll keep tracking it. But there are times where the subject tracking might fail, or it's hard to keep it exactly in the framing that I want. So,
or if it's maybe a low light environment and it's hard for the software to figure out.
Yeah, to separate the subject from the background if
Exactly.
it's noisy. Right. And then the tricks there are get the drone low, right? The higher the drone is, the more the subject's going to blend into the ground beside it or behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then for some mock scenarios, have you ever wanted to fly at X place? Well, do a site survey for it. See if it's feasible. And then if it is feasible, go fly there. But you won't know until you try, right? So then for FPV, so altitude control.
Yeah, you should be able to hover the drone in manual.
Yes.
That's a hard skill to master. Fly slow. The slower you fly, the harder it is to fly a drone.
Mm-hmm. Controlled turns and dives. We talk about like a coordinated turn where roll and yaw are balanced. Being able to do that will really improve your FPV skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Subject tracking again, similar things with the FPV. The subject tracking can be a little bit different, but it's
mostly manual.
But it's a similar skill. And then some freestyle maneuvers, rolls, yaw spins, and split S's.
Yeah.
More advanced maneuvers.
I would say that
do a barrel roll.
If you want to really focus and hone your FPV skills, like I said, flying as slow as possible, right? So confined area environments. And then when you're subject tracking, being able to execute an orbit around the subject while moving in parallel to the subject in manual mode.
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to involve flying backwards for a portion, flying sideways for a portion, and then not losing situational awareness of where you are relative to the obstacles around you so that you don't fly into a stop sign while you're tracking something sideways.
Yeah, like if you're following a car that is moving.
Yeah.
Exactly. As we say here, before you perform a trick in real life, practice it in the simulator. You should crash 1,000 times in the simulator before you even pick up an FPV drone.
Yeah. Yeah, your ratio should be 100 to 1.
So where are some good places to practice?
Your backyard.
Your backyard. Any open areas. You need to be careful, though, with ground permission. You cannot trespass for the point of taking off or landing.
Yeah, and then airspace as well.
And airspace as well.
Right. It's important to remember that this goes back to improving. Know your local bylaws.
Yeah, that's what this slide is.
Oh,
Check your local bylaws.
Sorry. Yeah.
You might not be able to fly everywhere.
Yeah.
There are most major Canadian cities have bylaws that preclude drone flights.
Yeah.
Some cities, though, actually have designated fly spots.
Mm-hmm.
There are designated areas in parks where you can fly your drone.
Calgary just recently updated. We talked about it on our weekly news there, but they now have clarified the limitations around over 250 gram drones. So there's definitely yet another reason to have a sub 250 gram drone in your fleet, even if you are a certified drone pilot.
These are some tips, tricks. You've just finished the flight review. Now it's time to actually learn to fly the drone.
Yeah. So now it's get out there and get flying.
Exactly.
And finish it up.
Exactly. This is getting posted in November.
Just in time for good weather.
Just in time for good weather.
If you guys have any questions, of course, always hit us up in the comments as well, right? If you have other ideas for how to improve your drone skills, or how do you stay fresh and current beyond just the regulations and the certification process, how do you become a drone pilot that masters your skills and keeps your revenue growing, then that is where you want to be. So share with us that in the comments below. If a video like this has been good, please hit that like and subscribe button. Stay tuned for more of these. They happen every week. If you want to check out our back catalog, we've got tons of videos that go much more into detail about drone photography, drone videography, the basics of flying, how to get certified. We've now got 36 plus episodes available on here. So check that out, and check out our newsletter and check out our site for actual advanced drone training. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one.